She almost did not go to her mother's birthday. She had the ticket, she had the time off work, and she had been planning the trip for 3 months. But 2 days before her flight, someone in her family group chat forwarded a message that said TSA was now handing people's information directly to immigration agents at airports. She sat with that ticket in her hand for 2 hours, trying to decide whether getting on a domestic flight, a flight inside the United States from one American city to another, was safe for her. She is a DACA recipient. She has been here since she was 4 years old, and she was afraid to fly home for her mother's birthday. My name is Sarah. I have spent over 20 years working alongside the U.S. immigration system, watching how policy changes move through agencies and how they land on families like hers. What is happening right now between TSA, the Transportation Security Administration, the federal agency that runs airport security checkpoints, and ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, the federal agency responsible for immigration enforcement inside the country, is real, it is significant, and it deserves a clear, honest explanation. Not a rumor, not a headline, the actual situation, so you can make an actual decision. I want to start by saying something plainly. The fear that immigrant families are feeling about everyday activities right now, about driving to work, dropping children at school, flying to visit family, is not irrational. The environment has changed. And when you receive a message in a family chat that says something like, "Do not go to the airport," the instinct to protect yourself and the people you love is completely understandable. I would never dismiss that. What I will do is give you the real information, because the real information is the only thing that actually helps you make good decisions. Awareness is the tool, not fear. Fear keeps you sitting on your couch with a ticket in your hand. Awareness tells you what the risk actually is and what you can do about it. So let me tell you what is actually happening, what changed, how it works, and what it means for different groups of people. TSA, the Transportation Security Administration, the agency whose officers you see at airport security lines, has historically had a very specific and limited job: to screen passengers and baggage for security threats, meaning weapons, explosives, and other dangers to aircraft. TSA is not an immigration agency. Its officers are not trained in immigration law and are not authorized to make immigration arrests. That has been true for decades, and it has not changed. What has changed is the data sharing. TSA collects identifying information on every traveler who passes through a U.S. airport: your name, your date of birth, your ID document, and the details of your flight. This information is part of what is called the Secure Flight Program, the system TSA uses to screen travelers against government watch lists before they board. That data has always existed. What is new is that agreements have been put in place or expanded that allow ICE, Immigration, and Customs Enforcement to access certain traveler data that TSA collects. This means that information you provide when you check in for a flight inside the United States can, under current arrangements, be visible to immigration enforcement personnel. Let me be precise about what that means and what it does not mean, because the difference matters enormously. Data sharing means that ICE may be able to see that a specific person boarded a specific flight. It does not mean that a TSA officer will stop you at the security checkpoint because of your immigration status. TSA's job is security screening, not immigration enforcement, and TSA personnel are not authorized to detain people for immigration violations at the checkpoint. What data sharing does is give ICE information it can use to locate people, coordinate with local law enforcement at an airport, or build a file on a person's movements over time. The checkpoint itself is not the primary enforcement mechanism. The information gathered there is. Here is the part that most people miss, and it is the part that actually determines your risk level. The question is not only what happens at the security line. The question is, what happens after? What ICE does with information it receives, and whether your name or your status triggers a response that results in enforcement action before, during, or after a flight. and that depends on factors that are specific to your situation, your immigration status, whether there is an active order or record connected to your name, and whether you are in a category that ICE is currently prioritizing. Now, let me walk through what people are saying about this in community groups right now, because I have heard some things that are going to get people hurt if they act on them. The first thing I keep hearing is, TSA is arresting immigrants at airports now. They are stopping people at security. TSA officers do not make immigration arrests. They are not authorized to, and they are not trained to. What can happen, and what has been reported, is that TSA data can trigger a response by ICE personnel who may be present at or near an airport separately from the TSA checkpoint. Those are different situations. A TSA officer waving you through security after checking your ID is doing their job. That is a different scenario from ICE personnel who received information in advance and are positioned elsewhere in the airport. The distinction matters for how you think about this. The next one I need to address is, if you have DACA, flying is now illegal. You will be arrested at the gate. DACA, Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, the program that gives certain people who came to the United States as children temporary protection from deportation and work authorization, does not prohibit travel within the United States. Flying domestically, meaning within the country, is not itself prohibited for DACA recipients. DACA does involve specific restrictions on international travel that require advance permission, called advance parole. But a domestic flight is not the same as crossing an international border. The specific risk for any individual depends on the current status of their DACA protection and whether there are any other immigration matters connected to their record. I also keep hearing, it does not matter what your immigration papers say. At the airport, they can see everything and they will act on it. The reality is more specific than this. Whether information in a database triggers enforcement action depends on what is in that database about you specifically. Someone with a valid visa, a pending green card application, or DACA protection faces a different risk profile from someone with a final order of removal, meaning a court has ordered their deportation and that order has not been appealed or stayed. Not every immigration status creates the same level of risk in this environment, and speaking as if it does leads people to make decisions based on generalized fear rather than their actual situation. And the fourth thing I hear, you should never carry your immigration documents to the airport. It makes you a target. This is backwards. In most circumstances, having your documents, your visa, your employment authorization card, your green card, any pending case receipt notices, with you is protective, not dangerous. Documents that demonstrate your legal status or your pending legal process give you something to show if you are questioned. An officer who asks about your status and you have documentation showing a current valid status or a pending application is in a different position from an officer who finds no documentation at all. Know what documents apply to your situation and carry them. Let me now talk about the hidden traps, the things that thoughtful people are getting wrong because nobody laid out the actual rules clearly. The first hidden trap is the ID trap. The Real ID Act, a federal law that establishes minimum security standards for state-issued identification, requires that by a specific federally mandated deadline, travelers on domestic flights present either a Real ID-compliant driver's license, a passport, or another federally accepted form of ID. Some states issue driver's licenses to undocumented residents that are not Real ID compliant. If you are traveling domestically and your ID is not Real ID compliant, and you do not have a passport or other accepted document, you may face additional screening at the TSA checkpoint. That additional screening involves more contact with TSA personnel and more documentation of your presence. Know in advance what ID you are carrying and whether it meets the current standard. The second hidden trap is the name match trap. TSA's secure flight system screens travelers against government watch lists using name and date of birth. If your name is similar to a name on a watch list, which happens more often than most people realize, particularly with common names from certain regions, you may be flagged for additional screening repeatedly. There is a formal process called the DHS TRIP program, Traveler Redress Inquiry Program, that allows people who are repeatedly flagged in error to apply for a redress number, which is a code that helps the system distinguish you from the person on the watch list. If you have been pulled aside multiple times at TSA for what feels like no reason, this program exists specifically to help you. The third hidden trap is the layover trap. When you book a connecting flight, a trip that involves stopping at one airport before reaching your destination, your data is processed at each airport you pass through, not just your final destination. A person who is attempting to be cautious about one specific airport may not have thought about the intermediate stop. If there is any concern about a specific city or airport, the layover airports on your itinerary are equally relevant. The fourth hidden trap is the digital footprint trap. When you book a flight online, you create a record in the airline system, in the booking platform, and potentially in government systems that airlines are required to report to. Booking a ticket generates data before you ever arrive at an airport. If your name is connected to any active enforcement interest in a government system, the booking itself may trigger a response. This does not mean you should avoid booking flights under your real name. That would create its own serious legal problems. But understanding that the data trail begins at booking, not at the checkpoint, changes how you think about the risk. I want to tell you about someone I will call Esperanza. Esperanza had DACA and had been living and working in the same city for 11 years. She needed to fly to another state for a family medical emergency. Someone in her community told her that flying was now equivalent to going to a government office and that she would almost certainly be stopped. Esperanza nearly drove 18 hours instead. What nobody helped her understand was that her specific situation, a current and valid DACA grant, no removal orders, no prior enforcement actions, placed her in a very different position from someone with an outstanding order. She spoke to an attorney the night before she needed to leave. The attorney reviewed her specific record, confirmed what she had and what risks were and were not present in her case, and she flew. She made it to her family. I share Esperanza's situation because the difference between generalized fear and accurate situation-specific information is sometimes the difference between being with your family and being alone on a highway at 2 a.m. The details are drawn from real situations and do not identify any specific person. What I am about to walk through is the information that determines what is actually true for your specific situation. And it is the part most people never get told. Let me speak directly to the different groups watching this right now, because this situation does not affect everyone the same way. If you have a valid non-immigrant visa, a tourist visa, a student visa, a work visa that is currently authorized, and no removal orders or other adverse immigration records connected to your name, domestic air travel does not carry the same level of risk as someone who has an active enforcement matter. Know your current status and carry your documentation. If you are a DACA recipient with a current valid grant, meaning your protection has not expired and has not been revoked, your situation is not the same as someone who is undocumented without any protection. That distinction matters for how you assess the risk of flying. Before any travel, verify that your DACA grant is current, that your employment authorization document has not expired, and that there are no other immigration matters attached to your record. If you have a final order of removal, meaning an immigration court has ordered your deportation and that order is currently active, you face a meaningfully higher level of risk in any situation that involves government data systems, including airports. If you are in this category, please speak with an immigration attorney before making any travel plans. There may be legal options available to you, including filing a motion to reopen your case that an attorney can help you evaluate. If you are a lawful permanent resident, a green card holder, domestic air travel is not prohibited and your status is protected. Carry your green card. If your card is expired, carry documentation of your pending renewal application. An expired card does not mean you have lost your status, but having proof of the renewal on file protects you in any interaction where your status is questioned. If you are a U.S. citizen traveling with a family member who has an immigration status, understand that at the security checkpoint, you will each be screened individually. Your citizenship does not extend as a shield over your family member at the TSA line. Prepare them independently. Make sure they know what ID they are carrying, what documents they have with them, and what their rights are if they are stopped or questioned. Here is what to do. Right now, before you book your next flight or help someone else book one. First, know your current immigration status and whether there are any active immigration matters, orders, or records connected to your name. If you are not certain, contact an immigration attorney before you travel. Second, check the expiration date on every immigration document you have. Visa, green card, DACA, employment authorization card, advance parole. A document that expired last month is not the same as a current one, even if your underlying status has not changed. Third, check whether your driver's license or state ID is Real ID compliant by looking for the star marking in the upper corner of the card. If it is not compliant, identify which other accepted documents you have: a passport card, a military ID, and plan to carry one of those when you fly. Fourth, if you have been flagged at TSA checkpoints multiple times without explanation, look up the DHS TRIP program at dhs.gov and apply for a redress number. The process is free and exists specifically for people in your situation. Fifth, if you have a final order of removal or any other active enforcement matter connected to your name, speak with an immigration attorney before any domestic travel. Do not rely on information from a community group or a neighbor. Get a specific assessment of your specific record. Sixth, carry your current immigration documents with you when you fly. Not to hand over voluntarily to any officer who asks without cause, but because documentation of your current status is a tool in your favor in the vast majority of interactions. Seventh, if you are stopped or questioned at any point in an airport by anyone beyond the routine TSA security process, you have the right to ask clearly whether you are being detained. If the answer is yes, you have the right to an attorney before answering questions. If the answer is no, you have the right to leave. Those two questions, am I being detained and may I have an attorney, are among the most important things you can know. I need to say something about the people who are going to try to profit from the fear around this topic. Right now, there are individuals and services advertising that they can review your immigration profile and tell you definitively whether it is safe for you to fly for a fee. Some of them are calling this a flight safety assessment or an airport risk review. There is no such certified service. The only person qualified to assess your specific immigration record and the specific risks it creates in the current environment is a licensed immigration attorney who can access your actual case history. Do not pay someone for a document that has no legal standing and will not protect you if something goes wrong. Let me tell you about someone I will call Marcus. Marcus had a work visa and had flown domestically many times without incident. After hearing about TSA and ICE data sharing, he paid a consultant who promised a complete airport safety clearance document for a flat fee. The consultant produced a letter on official-looking letterhead that said Marcus had been cleared for domestic travel. It meant nothing. It had no legal standing. It was not issued by any government agency. Marcus carried it in his bag for 6 months before an attorney friend told him it was worthless. He had paid for the feeling of safety without getting any actual safety. I share Marcus's story not to embarrass him, but because the instinct to find something to hold on to when you are frightened is human and understandable. And the people selling those fake reassurances are counting on exactly that instinct. The details are drawn from real situations and do not identify any specific individual. If you are a U.S. citizen or a lawful permanent resident and you have a family member whose travel has been affected, stopped at an airport, questioned by agents, or prevented from boarding, you can contact your congressional representative's constituent services office. This is the local staff of your elected member in the U.S. House of Representatives or Senate, and they are authorized to make formal inquiries with federal agencies on behalf of their constituents. They cannot override legal decisions or make enforcement actions disappear. But a congressional inquiry creates an official record, sometimes prompts faster review of a case, and signals to the agency that the situation is being watched by someone with oversight authority. Find your representative at house.gov by entering your zip code. Here is what you still hold. You have the right to know whether you are being detained before you answer questions. You have the right to remain silent beyond basic identification. You have the right to an attorney before participating in any formal questioning. You have the right to refuse to sign any document you have not read. And you have the right to ask any government official for their name and badge number during an interaction. These rights do not expire. They do not disappear because the environment is difficult. They are yours, and knowing them before you ever arrive at an airport is the best possible preparation. Let me close with what I know to be true after 20 years of watching this system move. The level of data sharing and coordination between government agencies that we are seeing right now is real, and it is the most extensive I have observed in my career. That is not an exaggeration. But the underlying law, the actual statutes that define your rights, the actual legal processes that allow you to challenge government actions, the actual protections that exist for people in various immigration categories, has not been eliminated. What has changed is how aggressively those systems are being used and how much information flows between agencies that used to operate more separately. That means the families best positioned to navigate this are the ones who understand their own situation with precision, not the ones who are operating from generalized fear. The woman I told you about at the beginning, the one sitting with her ticket, afraid to fly to her mother's birthday, she went. She talked to someone who knew her specific situation. She understood what her DACA grant meant and what risks were and were not present for her. She boarded the flight. She was at that birthday party. I am not telling you that to promise you a happy ending. I cannot make that promise, and I would never try. I am telling you because preparation is not nothing. It is the closest thing to protection that this system allows. If you have a specific situation, a visa category, a DACA case, a prior removal order, a family member who was stopped at an airport, a question about what documents to carry, leave it in the comments below. I read every single comment. I respond when I can, and the questions that appear most often directly shape what I address next. Your question tonight may be the answer someone else needs tomorrow. You came here for the truth about what is happening. I hope you feel like you found it. Travel carefully, know your rights, and know that someone who has spent 20 years inside this system is paying attention and is going to keep telling you what it is actually doing, not what it says it is doing.